Joining us now is one of those lawmakers on this letter, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know it's a busy day there. At what point did the U.S. military involvement in the region cross the line from the president is fine going it alone here without Congress to clearly Congress needs to weigh in now?
Brianna, every president has inherent power under Article 2 to defend the United States, and that's always been understood to mean defend U.S. personnel, U.S. military assets, possibly even U.S. commercial assets. He doesn't need to ask Congress's permission. But when you go on the offense against a group, and if it's more than just self-defense and now suddenly it's a back and forth that's escalating, that's classically when it becomes an offensive, not just defensive operation. And then second, we just have to remember that most of the ships transiting the Red Sea are not U.S. ships, they're foreign flag ships. And there might be a good strategic reason to protect them, but that is not a self-defense rationale under the Constitution. And so a bipartisan group wrote up the president asking this set of questions. It begins with, what is the strategy when we're trying to deter and degrade, but your administration is actually predicting that the Houthis are going to up the pace, which they are doing. Okay, what's the strategy? How do we de-escalate? And what are your legal authorities? We need to be briefed on that. And I think Congress needs to be brought into it, because the last thing we need to do is to slide into another war in the Middle East without a really careful consideration and a debate in front of the public.
And as you and other lawmakers point out in this letter, quote, 2 U.S. Navy SEALs tragically died while combating these threats, which, as you refer to, are the repeated Houthi attacks against international cargo ships and U.S. military assets protecting those ships in the Red Sea. We've heard administration officials, they say the SEAL raid was not part of this broader operation to protect shipping in the Red Sea. It sort of reads a little differently than your letter. Do you disagree with that characterization that we're hearing from the administration?
Well, if you can carve it up into everything as its own mission, and then maybe try to avoid the broader debate. But let's just face it, there is a regional escalation of military activity because of the war in Gaza. You see it in the Red Sea, you see it in Yemen, you see it with Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq, you see it with Hezbollah in Lebanon. This pace is increasing. And it is just absolutely critical. And I say this as an Armed Services Committee member with the son in the military in a state that has many military families. We do not need to be sliding into a military escalation in the region unless there is a considered debate about the strategy and the stakes and whether it's worth it or not. And so I think the escalation, if the president took an action against the Houthis because of these shots into the Red Sea and that stopped it, and it was just kind of a one-off defense, we might not be having this, but everything we're seeing suggests that the escalation will continue. And if that's going to be the case, then Congress needs to be brought into this.
Do you think it's transparent as the administration is trying to carve out things as separate when we're talking about a SEAL raid that interdicted weapons, Iranian-made, headed for Yemen, the type of which the Houthis are using to fire at commerce going through the Red Sea?
This loss of the SEAL lives was tragic, and it's now a number of days ago. And there might have been a thought at that time, well, maybe this is a one-off and it will stop. It's clearly not going to stop. You see the U.S. taking action with allies against the Houthis, and then the Houthis responding in kind. And the administration is saying that they don't expect the Houthis to stop. The only thing that has stopped the Houthis recently has been a hostage release deal. So when we got the hostage release deal, a month or so ago, where hostages were released by Hamas, Palestinian prisoners were released by Israel, and then there was a pause in hostilities to get humanitarian aid to Gazans, the Houthis stopped. That's the only thing that's shown there to be de-escalation, which is why I'm also upping my calls again. Let's focus on the linchpin of this whole thing, which is hostages. Let's really engage with the Israelis, the Qataris, the Egyptians, and everybody to get hostages released. If we do that, it's likely to come accompanied with a pause in hostility so we can get more humanitarian aid to suffering Gazans. That will also probably stop the Houthis.
But, sir, do you see what the SEALs were doing, that mission, as tied to the mission of the U.S. military trying to protect commerce in the region there?
Yes. I don't believe the SEAL mission was separate from what we're seeing in the Red Sea. If they were trying to interdict Iranian resupply of Houthis, whether the Houthis were going to use those resupplies in their own civil war or fire missiles at Israel, which they were doing a couple of weeks ago, or fire into the Red Sea, this is all connected. And I don't think you can separate it out into separate military actions. It's all connected. The American public is seeing it. My military families in Virginia are seeing this pace of escalation. I have Virginians deployed right now on ships that are deployed out of Norfolk, part of this operation to protect shipping and to protect other equities in the Middle East. We do not need an escalation of U.S. participation in wars in the Middle East right now before Congress and everybody's had a discussion about the risks, the consequences, and the benefits.
Why do you think there are those semantics that the administration is playing with then?
That's not and I wouldn't characterize it as playing, and I wouldn't characterize it as just a semantical difference. Again, at the time the operation was underway that tragically led to the loss of life of Navy SEALs, the intention might have been, we think this is going to just slow down. The pace of this Houthi activity is going to change next week, but I think by now we know that's not the case. Look at the number of rounds of now back and forth we've seen, and the administration is being not semantical, they're being very candid. They believe the escalation is likely to continue. And if that's the case, it's time for Congress, as the voice of the American public, to be brought into the discussion.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but I will also note that it was just 2 days ago that a senior military official and a senior defense official held a background briefing where they made a very key distinction that they saw these things as separate. Senator, I appreciate your conversation on the matter. Senator Tim Kaine, thank you so much for being with us.
You bet, Brianna.
And we'll be right back.